I need to make a call. I need to tell someone what's happened.
A car that had seen better decades. On the side of a lonely stretch of Highway 16, just outside of Atlanta, 78-year-old Evelyn Vance sat behind the wheel. The heater had died 3 miles back. The engine had given its final sputtering breath 2 minutes ago. Her hands, thin and mapped with the blue veins of a long life, trembled as she gripped the steering wheel. Before we get into the legendary payback of this story, I want to welcome you to Modernist Africa Folktale. Here we believe that a person's value isn't found in their bank account. If you believe that karma always finds its way home, then hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. Now let's begin. She was cold. She was wet. She was invisible. In the rearview mirror she saw the headlights of a silver Porsche Cayenne approaching. It slowed down and for a moment hope flickered in Evelyn's chest. But the driver didn't stop to help. He rolled down his window just enough to shout, "Get that piece of junk off the road, old lady. Some of us have places to be." He stepped on the gas, splashing a wall of muddy water across her windshield and disappeared into the gray mist. Evelyn closed her eyes. A single tear tracked through the wrinkles on her cheek. This was the moment that breaks a person. The moment you realize that to the world you are nothing more than a ghost. An inconvenience. A relic of a time that no longer exists. Now before I tell you the incredible thing that happened when the roar of 20 Harley-Davidsons broke the silence of that rainy night, I want to welcome you to the channel. If you believe that a person's worth isn't measured by the car they drive or the suit they wear, you found the right place. Stories of the humble who rise and the proud who fall. We tell stories about the moments that define our humanity. If you love seeing justice served and the invisible people finally being seen, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on your notifications. Because the story of Evelyn Vance and the group of bikers, known as the Iron Disciples, is a journey of payback you will never forget. Drop a comment below saying, "I believe in kindness," if you've ever stopped to help a stranger. Like this video to help us spread this message of hope to the world. Because today we are going to learn that the most powerful person in the room is often the one you'd least expect. Let's go back to 30 minutes before that Porsche splashed water on a grandmother's broken dreams. Let's go back to the city, to a man named Jax. Jax stood in the middle of a garage in South Atlanta, the smell of grease and burnt oil thick in the air. At 34, Jax looked like a man the world should fear. 6'4", shoulders like an ox, a beard that reached his chest and tattoos that told the story of a decade spent in the army. He was the president of the Iron Disciples, a motorcycle club that the local police watched with suspicion, but the local community treated it like family. But today Jax didn't feel like a leader. He felt like a failure. In his hand was a letter from the bank. Foreclosure. The garage, Jax's customs, was 3 months behind on rent. It wasn't because he was lazy. Jax was the best mechanic in the state. It was because his younger sister, Maya, was in the ICU. A hit and run 3 months ago had left her with a broken spine and a mountain of medical bills that insurance refused to touch. Every penny Jax made went to the hospital. He'd sold his own house. He slept on a cot in the back of the shop. "Jax," a voice called out. Jax looked up. It was Big Mike, his oldest friend, a man who had served with him in the 101st Airborne. "The boys are ready. We're headed to the coast for the annual toy run. Are you coming?" Jax looked at the foreclosure notice. He looked at the empty toolbox he'd been forced to sell his best wrenches out of just to buy Maya a new wheelchair. "I can't, Mike. I need to stay and see if I can get this engine timed." "Brother," Big Mike said, his voice low and steady, "you've been in this dark hole for 3 weeks. Maya is stable for today. The road clears the head. Don't ride, you're gonna snap. The road is where we find our answers." Jax looked at his bike. A 1979 shovelhead he'd built from parts found in a junkyard. It was the only thing he had left. He took a deep breath. 5 minutes. Let me grab my vest. The Iron Disciples didn't ride like the movies. They didn't weave through traffic or harass drivers. They rode in a perfect staggered formation, a wall of chrome and black leather. 20 men who had been through war, through poverty, through the worst life could throw at them. They were men who had been forgotten by society, so they built their own. As they hit the highway, the sky opened up. The rain came down in sheets. Most riders would have pulled over, but the disciples loved the rain. Washed away the noise. They were 10 miles out of the city limits when Jax, leading the pack, saw a flash of white. A hazard light, dim and struggling. He saw the Buick. Saw the silver Porsche speeding away, leaving the old car in its wake. Jax didn't hesitate. He raised his hand, signaling the formation to slow. He pointed to the shoulder. "What are we doing?" Big Mike's voice crackled through the comms. "Junker Jax. We're gonna be late for the toy run." "Look at the driver, Mike," Jax replied. Through the blurred rain, they saw a small white-haired head bowed over the steering wheel. She looked like a bird with a broken wing. Jax pulled his bike directly behind the Buick, his tailpipe growling as he kicked the stand down. The other 19 bikers followed, surrounding the car in a protective circle of heavy machinery. To a bystander, it looked like a scene from a nightmare. 20 massive, leather-clad bikers surrounding a lone elderly woman on a dark highway. As Jax walked toward the driver's side window, he tucked his long hair behind his ears and wiped the grease from his forehead. He wanted her to see his eyes. He knew his size was a weapon, and right now he needed to put that weapon away. Evelyn Vance heard the thunder before she saw the bikes. He thought it was the storm is getting worse. Then the vibration started. A deep, rhythmic thrumming that shook the Buick's frame. She looked up and saw them. Giant men in black leather, skulls on their vests, chains hanging from their belts. She felt a surge of fear. She reached for her phone, her fingers fumbling with the lock screen. Is this how it ends? He wondered. Ignored by the rich man and hunted by the outlaws. Then there was a knock on the glass. Soft, purposeful. She looked up. Jax was standing there, soaked to the bone. He didn't look like a predator. He looked like he was hurting as much as she was. He made a rolling motion with his hand. Evelyn hesitated, then lowered the window 2 inches. "Ma'am." Jax's voice was a deep baritone, but it was gentle. "I'm Jax. My friends and I saw you from the road. You okay?" Evelyn's voice was a whisper. "The car, it just stopped. I was trying to get home to my daughter. She's expecting me for dinner." Jax looked at the Buick. He could smell the head gasket from 5 feet away. New cars. This car wasn't just broken, it was dead. "Ma'am, it's freezing out. Here, my brothers and I are gonna get you out of this rain. We have a van following us with the gear. It's warm, it's dry. We'll get your car towed to my shop and we'll get you where you're going." Evelyn looked at the circle of bikers. They were all standing in the rain, hands behind their backs, guarding her. They weren't looking at her like she was a ghost. They were looking at her like she was their own mother. I don't have much money," Evelyn said, her voice trembling. "I can't pay for a tow." Jax smiled. It was the first time he'd smiled in a month. "Money? Don't pay for the family. And on this road, anyone in trouble is family. Mike, get the van up here. Tiny, call the flatbed." They moved with military precision. Within minutes, the gear van, a large, comfortable Mercedes Sprinter, pulled up. Big Mike helped Evelyn out of the car, shielding her from the rain with his own leather jacket. He placed her in the captain's chair of the van and handed her a thermos of hot coffee. "You just sit tight, Miss Evelyn," Big Mike said. "Jax is the best mechanic in Georgia. If it can be fixed, he'll fix it. If it can't, we'll find you something better." Evelyn sat in the warmth of the van watching the bikers work. They were drenched. They were losing time on their trip. They were getting muddy, dirty, and exhausted. She looked at her phone. She had 1 bar of service. "Jax," she called out through the open door of the van. Jax walked over, dripping water. "Yes, ma'am. I need to make a call. I need to tell someone what's happened. I don't want them to worry." "Of course," Jax said. "Take your time. We're not going anywhere until you're safe." Jax walked back to the Buick to help Tiny hook up the tow straps. He didn't think anything of the call. He figured she was calling a daughter or maybe a neighbor. He was just glad she was warm. But inside the van, Evelyn Vance wasn't calling a neighbor. She dialed a number she knew by heart. It was a private line. A line that only for people in the world had. A voice answered on the second ring. A voice that was used to giving orders to thousands of people. Mother? You're late. I've had the security detail looking for your GPS signal, but it cut out near the highway. Are you all right? Evelyn looked out the window at Jax, who was currently lying in a puddle of mud. To secure a safety chain. I'm fine, Gregory. But the car died. I'm on Highway 16. I'm sending the helicopters, the voice said, rising in panic. I'm calling the state police. Give me your exact coordinates. No, Evelyn said firmly. Do not send the helicopters. And do not call the police. I am perfectly safe. I am with a group of, suppose you would call them knights. Rough-looking knights, but knights nonetheless. Mother, what are you talking about? Who are you with? Evelyn smiled. I'm with the Iron Disciples. And Gregory? I need you to do something for me. I need you to look up a man named Jax. He owns a shop in South. And I need you to find out everything about a girl named Maya Vance. No, wait, her name isn't Vance. Jax's last name. Find Maya. She's in the ACU at Grady Memorial. Mother, I don't understand. You will, Gregory. Just do as I say. And bring the checkbook. Not the personal. But the one for the foundation. I think we're about to make the largest investment in the history of this city. Evelyn hung up the phone. She looked at Jax, who was waving the tow truck forward. Jax had no idea. He thought he was helping a poor woman in a junker. He didn't. No, he had just saved the mother of Gregory Thorne, the CEO of Thorne International, the man who owned the very bank that was foreclosing on Jax's garage. The flatbed dropped the Buick at Jax's customs at 11 p.m. The rain had turned into a light drizzle. The Iron Disciples were exhausted, their boots squelching with every step. All right, boys, Jax said, clapping his hands. Run is cancelled for tonight. We'll head out at dawn. For now, Mike, take the van and drop Miss Evelyn at her daughter's place. Tiny, stay with me. I want to see if I can at least get this Buick's engine to turn over so she has a car tomorrow. Evelyn stepped out of the van. She looked at the garage. It was small. It was peeling. She saw the notice of foreclosure taped to the window. Jax saw her looking and quickly moved to stand in front of it, his face flushing with shame. Don't mind that, ma'am, Jax said. Just some paperwork mix-up with the bank. We'll have it sorted. Evelyn didn't say a word. She walked up to the door and looked Jax in the eye. Jax, why did you stop? Most people didn't. That man in the Porsche flashed me. He laughed. Jax looked down at his boots. My father was a tapper back in Nigeria before we moved here. He used to say that a man's character isn't found in how he treats his boss. It's found in how he treats the person who can do absolutely nothing for him. You needed help. I have hands. It's that simple. Evelyn reached out and touched Jax's leather vest right over his heart. You have a good soul, Jax. The world tries to hide souls like yours under grease and leather, but I see you. Big Mike, Jax called out, his voice a bit choked up. Get her home. As the van pulled away, Jax and Tiny started working. They worked until 3 a.m. They pulled the head off the engine. It was warped. Melted. The car was a total loss. She's gonna be devastated, Jax, Tiny said, wiping his hands. She said this car was all she had to get to her daughters. Jax sat on a stack of tires. He looked at his own bike. The shovel head was worth about $8,000. Call the guy in North Carolina, Jax said. What? The collector? Tiny asked. Jax, no. That's your bike. That's your only bike. Sell it, Jax said. Tell him if he can wire the money by 8 a.m. he can have. We're gonna go to the dealership down the street. We're gonna buy that silver Camry they have out front. The reliable one. We're gonna put a bow on it. Jax, you'll be walking. You'll have no shop, no bike, and no way to get to the hospital to see Maya. Jax stood up. I have my legs. I'll walk. Miss Evelyn shouldn't have to. Him. The sun finally broke through the clouds. Jax was sitting on the curb. In front of his shop, his eyes red from lack of sleep. A brand new silver Toyota Camry was parked where the Buick used to be. A giant red bow was taped to the hood. Jax had $40 left in his bank account. He was waiting for the bus to take him to the hospital when a black SUV pulled. Not just any SUV. A Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and government plates. Jax stood up, his hand instinctively going to the knife on his belt. The bank. Sent the heavies, he thought. But it wasn't the bank. The door opened and a man in a $5,000 suit stepped out. He was followed by two men in earpieces. Jax recognized him instantly from the news. Gregory Thorne. The man who owned half of Atlanta. Then the back door opened. Evelyn Vance stepped out. She wasn't wearing the wet, tattered cardigan from last night. She was wearing a silk coat and pearls. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. Jax stood frozen. Miss Evelyn. Gregory Thorne walked up to Jax. He looked at Jax's grease-stained clothes. He looked at the massive biker. Then Gregory Thorne did something that made the Secret Service agents gasp. He reached out and shook Jax's hand. My mother told me I had to meet the man who stayed in the rain for 5 hours. To fix a car that wasn't worth the scrap metal it was made of, Gregory said. His voice was thick with emotion. She also told me that you were planning on selling your motorcycle this morning to buy her a new car. Jax stammered. She needed a ride, sir. Evelyn walked up and took Jax's arm. I told you, Jax. I see you. Gregory Thorne looked at the garage. I understand Thorne National Bank has been difficult regarding your lease. Jax looked at the foreclosure notice. We've had some medical bills, Mr. Thorne. I was gonna pay for it, I just needed time. Gregory Thorne pulled an envelope from his jacket. You don't need time, Jax. You need a partner. Jax opened the envelope. Inside was a deed. Not a lease. A deed. The entire block, including the garage and the 3 buildings next to it, now belonged to Jax and Maya Customs. But that wasn't all. I took the liberty of visiting Grady Memorial this morning, Gregory said. Maya has been moved to the private wing at Emory. The best surgeons in the countries are flying in as we speak. Thorne International is sponsoring her entire recovery. And Jax? There's a flatbed arriving in 10 minutes. It's carrying a 2024 CVO Road Glide. A gift from my mother. She said a knight shouldn't have to walk. Jax's knees buckled. He sat back down on the curb, the deed to his life shaking in his hands. Why? Jax whispered. Evelyn leaned down and kissed his forehead. Because, Jax, you stopped when the world told you to keep driving. You saw a person when everyone else saw a problem. Jax looked at the silver Camry with the red bow. He realized he didn't need to sell his bike anymore. He realized his sister was going to walk again. He realized that the garage, his father's dream, was finally safe. But the story doesn't end with a check and a new bike. The Iron Disciples didn't just go back to being a motorcycle club. The funding from the Thorne Foundation, Jax turned the empty buildings next to his shop into a vocational center. He hired veterans. He hired kids from the neighborhood who had nowhere to go. He taught them how to use their hands to build a future just like his father had taught him. Evelyn Vance became a regular at the shop. Every Tuesday a black Escalade would drop her off and she would sit in a lawn chair in the back of the garage, drinking tea and watching the boys work. They called her the Queen of the Road. And the man in the silver Porsche? The one who splashed Evelyn and laughed? Gregory Thorne didn't believe in revenge. He believed in lessons. He found out. The man worked for a hedge fund that Thorne International did business with. A week later, that man found himself sitting in Gregory Thorne's office, expecting a promotion. Instead, Gregory played a video. It was the dashcam footage from one of the Iron Disciples' bikes. It showed the Porsche splashing a 78-year-old woman and speeding away. In my company, Gregory said, his voice cold as ice, we don't hire people who lack the basic decency to help a grandmother in the rain. You have 10 minutes to clear your desk. As the man walked out, humiliated and jobless, he passed a group of bikers in the lobby. Jax was at the front. He looked at the man in the suit. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. Jax walked into Gregory's office, but he didn't sit in the leather chair. He went straight to Evelyn and gave her a hug. The Buick is finished, ma'am, Jax said. I rebuilt the engine. Every bolt. Every seal. It runs better than the day it left the factory. But I have the Camry, Jax. Evelyn smiled. I know, Jack said. But that Buick is your history. And I don't let history die. The hallways of Emory University Hospital didn't smell like grease or exhaust. They smelled like floor wax and expensive air filters. Jax felt out of places. He walked through the sliding glass doors of the private wing. He was wearing his best flannel shirt, but his knuckles were still stained with the
room
black
912
of engine
on the
oil
door
that didn't say, patient. It said Maya. Okonkwo. Jack stepped inside. Maya was sitting up. For 3 months she had been a ghost. In a white gown, her eyes clouded by pain and the fog of cheap state-mandated Medicaid. But today the room was filled with flowers. Not the grocery store. Carnations Jax used to bring, but lilies and orchids. Jax, she whispered. He rushed to her side, taking her hand. Her grip was stronger. The doctors, Jax. They said I'm a candidate for the cybernetic spinal bridge. I'll be in physical therapy by Monday. They said I'm going to walk, Jax. How did we afford this? Jax sat on the edge of the bed, a single tear escaping his eye and landing on the white sheets. We didn't afford it, Maya. A queen paid for it. He told her the story. He told her about the rain on Highway 16. He told her about the broken Buick and the silver Porsche. He told her about the 20 men in leather who stood in the mud just so an old woman wouldn't feel alone. They're outside, Maya, Jack said, nodding toward the window. Maya looked down at the street. In the parking lot below, 20 motorcycles were parked in a perfect line. The Iron Disciples were there. They weren't allowed in the private wing, so they stood by their bikes in the sun, their chrome polished to a mirror finish. They saved me? Maya asked, her voice breaking. No, Jack said. A grandmother saved us. We just held the umbrella. 1 year later. The intersection of South Atlanta looked different. The peeling paint was gone. In its place stood a state-of-the-art facility, the Vance Okonkwo Vocational Center. It wasn't just a garage anymore. It was a sanctuary. On the left side, Jax's Customs continued to build the best bikes in the South. But on the right side there were classrooms. There were computer labs where young men and women from the neighborhood learned coding and engineering. There was a sewing room, dedicated to Jax's mother, where local women created high-end fashion from traditional African fabrics. Gregory Thorne didn't just give Jax money, he gave him a legacy. On the day of the grand opening, a familiar silver Porsche Cayenne pulled into the lot. The driver, the same man who had splashed Evelyn a year ago, stepped out. He looked smaller now. His suit was wrinkled. He hadn't found work since Gregory Thorne fired him. He had come to the center because he had heard they were hiring anyone willing to work. He walked up to the front desk, not recognizing the man standing there. Jax was wearing a clean polo shirt with the center's logo, but his tattoos were still visible on his arms. He looked at the man. He remembered the face. He remembered the splash of muddy water. The man pushed a resume across the counter. I'm looking for a management position. I have a background in hedge funds. Jax didn't pick up the resume. He looked past the man toward the back of the Evelyn Vance was sitting there in her lawn chair, holding a cup of tea. Maya was standing next to her, leaning lightly on a cane, laughing as she showed Evelyn something on a tablet. Jax looked back at the man. We don't have management positions for people who think they're above the road. But, Jax pointed to a bucket and a sponge near the wash bay. We're looking for someone to detail the bikes. It's $15 an hour. You'll be working in the sun. You'll be getting wet. You'll be invisible to most people who drive by. The man's face turned red. You're joking. Do you know who I am? I know exactly who you are, Jax said calmly. You're the man who thinks a car defines a human being. Here the work defines the man. Take the sponge or take the road. The choice is yours. The man looked at the sponge. He looked at the bikers in the back, turned around and walked away, his head low. He still hadn't learned the lesson. But the world was finished teaching him for free. Jax walked to the back of the shop and sat on a bench next to Evelyn. You did a good thing here, Jax, she said, patting his hand. We did a good thing, ma'am, Jax replied. Evelyn looked at the 1998 Buick Century, which was now parked in the lobby of the center, encased in glass like a piece of art. It was a reminder to everyone who entered that even the most broken thing can be a vessel for a miracle. My father used to say, Jax began, his voice echoing the staccato rhythm of a man who finally found his peace, that a river does not drink its own water. A tree does not eat its own fruit. The sun does not shine for itself. Living for others is the rule of nature. And that is the lesson of the iron disciples and the woman in the Buick. Your value doesn't decrease because someone fails to see it. The people who try to break you are always the ones who can't build anything themselves. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't a punch or a lawsuit. It's becoming everything they said you couldn't be, and letting them watch from the shoulder of the road while you ride by. If this story moved your heart, if it reminded you to look twice at the person standing in the rain, then our job here is done. But before you go, hit that subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Because every story we tell is a seed planted for a kinder world. Remember, the next time you see someone in a broken down car, don't just see a problem. See a person. Because you never know who is on the other end of that phone call. And you never know when you might be the night they've been praying for. Every tale has a lesson, and modernist Africa folktale never forget. I'll see you in the next story.